No more Mr. Nice Guy.
Hey guys, the Explorer of Horror here. Welcome back to some more reviews, and welcome to my review on Bone Tomahawk, a 2015 film. And this is kind of an example of a movie where back in 2015 when this first came out, which by the way, beautiful steelbook. I love the art on it, and it's Blu-ray, so looked pretty good. Video quality, picture quality, and audio quality, all that good stuff. Some features in there, not really a steelbook to get for its special features, but I do really dig the artwork. Now, Bone Tomahawk, back in 2015, this is a movie that I heard a lot about. I heard it get brung up a lot in discussions for one of the better movies of that year. But over the years, it's kind of disappeared. It's disappeared, and I don't know why. I think this should be up there as a Western classic. I think it should be looked at as, in my opinion, one of the best Westerns of all time. And we'll get into more in-depth detail into my thoughts on the film in just a little bit here. It gets a 7.1 on IMDb. Like I said, came out in 2015 and was directed by S. Craig Zahler, who also did Brawl and Cell Block 99 and also did a film called Dragged Across Concrete. Both movies I've heard good things about. He's also got a film coming up called The Bookie and the Bruiser, which is in pre-production right now as I'm recording this video. Now, as Craig Zahler, this is a director that is up and coming. I mean, I've heard amazing things about this and Brawl and Cell Block 99. I've heard just infinite good things about these movies for the longest time. Again, though, this is sort of a forgotten movie from the time, and you don't really hear it brung up with movies like Unforgiven and Tombstone and all these other classic Westerns that you hear about. You never really hear about Bone Tomahawk too much. Back when it came out, I heard about it everywhere, but it's a shame this movie kind of got forgotten a bit. And essentially what the story is, you've got these people come into a small western town in the middle of the night. They kidnap some people out of the jail area. And you find these people are cannibalistic cave dwellers. And it's a simple story. They kidnap some people. One of them is the wife to Patrick Wilson's character. The sheriff's character, Kurt Russell, realizes that they got to go rescue her. And so him, Patrick Wilson, Matthew Fox, Richard Jenkins, they all set out on an adventure to go and try and save Patrick Wilson's wife. And on the way to these, because the area they're going to isn't even the only threat in the movie. They also, on the way there, deal with bandits. They deal with the environment and nature. And they deal with a lot of, they just go through hell to get to this area. And speaking of going through hell, they go through hell to get to, I guess you could say, hell's Hades, because it gets even worse for these people when they finally get to where they're trying to go to. And I absolutely loved this movie. I think this film is a masterpiece, and I don't even use that word a lot to describe movies when I'm doing reviews and everything like that. This movie is a masterpiece. This movie is one of the best. I mean, granted, I'm not a Western guy. I haven't went out and saw a lot of these Westerns. I know a lot of the classics, people would look at me and be like, you haven't seen that? Just not really a big fan. It's not that I'm a big fan of Westerns. It's just, I don't know. It's a blind spot for me. I never really went in depth in the Western genre. And so I definitely want to go and check out, obviously, the classics and watch some of the more well-known Western films. But out of all of them I have seen, this is up there. This is easily one of the best Western films out there. And it's a bit different than a typical Western movie. I mean, a lot of Westerns, it's action packed. It's popcorn. It's explosions sometimes. It's, dealing with the band of thieves and, oh, we're going to go out and get the thieves. And it just, kind of what you're getting with a typical Western. Here, this is much more of a dark thriller. I guess you could throw the horror genre in there in some moments. Not all moments, but mainly towards the end of the movie. It gets some really dark, heavy horror tone moments. But it doesn't go the typical route. Usually Westerns, this one's very hyper realistic. It takes its time. It's 2 hours and 12 minutes. Although honestly, I didn't even notice. There was not one single moment in this movie that I didn't find to be beautiful to look at, or interesting, or just really brutal. This movie is a very violent, brutal film. And there are certain scenes that'll stick with you long after you see this movie. And so the brutality factor I thought was there. There's a lot of factors in this movie that make it very different compared to other Westerns. And wonderful cast here. I mean, this movie has one of my favorite lineups for a cast. Mainly because I also think it's one of the best written scripts I've seen in a while. I think the characters here, this is a pure fact to study these characters. I mean, just look at these characters in this movie, how they're written, how they're performed. This just goes to show that characters and character work in a movie really improves a film and can really make it even better. I'm a big supporter of that. I think characters and writing are very key elements to a film, and I think these characters are extremely well written. And you got Kurt Russell, Patrick Wilson, Matthew Fox, Richard Jenkins. Didn't mind Lily Simmons in there. Didn't mind some of the other side characters. I know you get Sid Haig and David Arquette at the beginning in these cameos. David Arquette, he's in there for a little bit. Sid Haig's mainly there for a cameo, but it's one hell of a way to open your movie. And I would offer a spoiler alert. I guess I could. Spoiler alert, starting now. But a lot of people have seen this movie. I felt like I was a bit left out because everybody talked about Bone Tomahawk all the time. So I was like, I just felt like I'm kind of the only person that hasn't seen this movie yet, it seems. Because some people were pretty shocked that I hadn't seen this film. And I mean, I don't blame them. This movie, I think you should check out. Everybody out there who hasn't seen it, check it out. It's a great Western film. So I think the acting is on point. I think this was a wonderful lineup for the cast. I think Kurt Russell is a great lead. I think the story is unpredictable. It goes routes that you don't expect. Certain characters do get killed off that you don't see coming. Certain fates happen to certain characters. Very real to life. It's not a movie where it's going to be a lot of people going out in a blaze of glory and, people, throwing sticks of dynamite and blowing everything up and it being all about action. Very down-to-earth, nitty-gritty type of movie. Very realistic, some would probably argue drawn out, but I think it really adds to the story. And I think it has one of the most intense third acts I've seen in a film. Most of the effects in this movie are practical, and I appreciated that. Most of the locations look practical, so I wonder if they shot it on location out in the desert or the hillside somewhere. The usage of CGI, it isn't apparent in this movie. I don't notice it. I don't see it. Maybe it is there at certain points. But the key thing about CGI is to not notice it, and I didn't really notice any CGI in this movie. So that's a good thing, because at this time, such a different movie for even in 2015. You think about 2015, Jesus Christ, it was almost 10 years ago. 2015 we were in the era that we're still kind of in. We haven't gotten out of it. But we were in that era of heavy action, just blockbuster popcorn film. Over the top, realistic is the furthest word that you would use to describe the movies. And it was all about blockbuster entertainment in 2015. I mean, it was Fast and the Furious, it was Marvel, it was DC. So, and ironically, and not for the better, that shit still exists today in the movie industry. It hasn't changed a bit. We get a little bit more reboots now, though. But for this movie to come out at that time, it really must have stuck out because it's not that. It's very slow. It's very slow paced and it takes its time. And I guess I could say it lets you breathe a bit before it hits you with the hardcore stuff. And so, in my opinion, when it gets brutal, it gets about 10 times more brutal than a normal movie. Because, like, for instance, I think Rambo 4 is really brutal, but I think there's a lot, like, it happens very sporadically in that movie. Whereas in this movie, that's a bit more surprising when it gets brutal, when it gets gory, when it gets violent. It's such a long spaced out movie that in between these scenes of dialogue and talking and getting to know these characters, true to real life, anything can happen. Someone can get killed off like that in the movie, and that's just sort of how it went. And it just has moments of coldness. It has moments of brutal reality, and it feels real. It feels real. It feels like you're dropped in this world, in this universe this movie takes place in. And you're just admiring at points the beauty of the landscape and how everything is filmed, and you like these characters. My favorite character is Chicory, the Richard Jenkins character, who I thought he disappeared under the makeup. I couldn't even tell it was him. He's a character that I think a lot of people maybe don't like because of how he's written. Some people could easily look at him and say that's an annoying character. To me, I think he has the purest heart of all the characters, and I think his character, to me, has it's just, to me, my favorite character with a lot of my favorite moments, bits of dialogue. He's likable. He's a guy who you feel bad that he's seen all this horrible, awful stuff around him because he's a very pure soul. He means well. He's the deputy, and he loves being the deputy. He has pride in his job and pride in his work. And I really love this character. And even characters like, I think it's Bruder, who you maybe don't like this character at first. You think he's an asshole. You get to know the character, maybe understand a bit, even though he's not making the right decisions at times. You understand where he's coming from a bit. That 2-hour runtime, I appreciate that, because I think if the studio would have came in and been like, okay, look, we're going to trim it down to an hour and a half and you're good to go. Now, I'm usually the guy that says, hey, hour and a half, boom, get it done, go. This is a movie that needed to breathe. It needed that time, in my opinion. It needed that space so that you could hear these characters just sitting around and talking, getting to know them, why they're doing what they're doing, a bit about their past. Kurt Russell's character, the sheriff, is a really likable character. Patrick Wilson's character, you feel so bad for this poor guy. And it's awesome that towards the end of the movie, he ends up being one of the major factors in helping to save his wife. Because he's a character with a broken leg in the movie, so you think, oh, they're going to do that typical thing in a movie where the person that has a broken leg or a broken arm or can't move very well will lead them over here, and the movie kind of forgets about that character for a little while. No, he's there. Whether he is able to or not, he's in the area, danger zone. He's in the danger zone. And he will die if he just sits there. So, just the realism of this movie, the realism, them going through the desert and people are robbing them in the middle of the night. There's a one moment where Patrick Wilson's character falls asleep and he hears something, so he wakes up and the Bruder character is being stabbed and he's about to get killed. And so Patrick Wilson has to be really fast and shoot the guy that's trying to stab him. And so you realize that, like, they get robbed and they have nothing left and they keep moving forward. And there's moments where Patrick Wilson's character is slowing them down, so he says, hey, you guys go ahead and I'll catch up with you guys when you guys are sleeping. So it's smart. It's a movie that I haven't seen that too many times in films. Just the little details, the little things here and there, I appreciated. And this brutal, brutal group of, they're not indigenous people. They're just cannibals. They're a cannibal tribe up in the hills. And they just roll into the town, and the way they murder people is brutal. I mean, a guy literally gets an arrow through the head, gets eviscerated and chopped up in like 3 seconds. Like, I'm telling you, when you're watching that scene, that all happens to the poor guy in the barn scene, in like 3 seconds. It's a very fast boom. You see it, boom, 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 he's dead. And it's just like, I was like, what was that? And the very opening of the movie was Sid Haig and David Arquette, these two bandits who have just gotten done robbing a stagecoach. They run into this tribe, and Sid Haig just gets eviscerated. His character gets eviscerated, and David Arquette is running, gets away. Somehow he escapes with his life. But in the background, you can see them just start to cut up this character. And it just, with most movies, it would be snappy editing and quick moving camera and music. It's just a straight up shot, boom, you see it, it's done. And they don't drag it out. It's just assaults, these really quick assaults, and it's done. And that's what makes the ending so well done, is there's no music, there's no shaky cam. They'll just be walking, and an arrow will hit someone in the hat, or they'll hit them in the arm, and they ain't invincible. They're getting their hands cut off, they're getting arrows, and whether they're getting rocks thrown to their head, and they got gashes, or they got arrows in the arm, they have to break off. There's a point where Kurt Russell's character gets his like stomach cut open a little bit, and the villain takes his flask, his metal flask, heats up and puts it in the wound. Very brutal scene. Easily one of the most brutal kills I've ever seen in any movie is they get this guy, and it's I guess a graphic warning. It's one of the most graphic, brutal kills I've ever seen in a movie. And I think it's because, like I said, like the other scenes, what makes it effective is there's no music. There's no over the top. It just happens. Like, very fast. And they get this guy who was protecting this girl, and his last thing he tells Kurt Russell is that David Arquette's character was a liar. And you find out that that's why the girl ended up getting kidnapped, because those cannibals wanted to get David Arquette, didn't want him to get away. So they stalked him back to this town, and they kidnapped him and the girl as well. So they just took her. So David Arquette's character, you found, got killed. This guy was one of the deputies, and he was protecting the chick, but he gets killed right in front of the sheriff, and it's so brutal. They upside down, get him upside down. They take a tomahawk and they hit him in the right where his privates are, and they just. If you think about Terrifier 1, where the girl gets sawn in half, sort of the same thing, but they chop the dude. You see like 3 solid chops, and then these 2 guys just pull his legs apart, and you see his insides fall out. And it's just like, I was just, like jaw dropped. I was utterly shocked. I was just like, it was absolutely one of the most chilling scenes I've ever seen in a film. But they get the revenge on these cannibals, and I think I've pretty much explained this entire movie. I don't do that very often. Until you know it's a good movie, if I can break down the whole movie and be like, every single part of this movie I like. Because this is really one of those rare films where it is like that. Every part of this movie I really enjoyed. I really loved every aspect of it. And like every scene to me was good. You even have the creepy idea of like, these people, they have like something right here in like their trachea. So they can't talk, but they can sound like animals. And Patrick Wilson's all alone, and he's just hearing them making noise up in the hills. They're watching them. And it's just like, it's cool seeing them get revenge against the cannibals, though. And, eventually they kill off all the cannibals, and I won't spoil who lives and who dies. I want you guys to go see it. I know I said I was going to spoil stuff, but I want you guys to go see the movie. If you've seen the movie, you know who lives and dies. But yeah, I mean it's a wonderful movie. It's so brutal and dark, but equally interesting with the characters and the way it's written. It's very realistic. Nothing over the top about it. It breathes, it takes its time with its characters and character development. But just how fast some of these characters get killed off, or how fast they get hurt or damaged or just wounded. It's shocking. Lots of shocking moments, keeps you engaged the whole way, and just a very well-made movie, extremely well-made movie. And I think this is the debut film for this director, and I think he did a phenomenal job making this movie. Phenomenal. But yeah, I'm going to give this movie a 5 out of 5. I think that's the first 5 out of 5 I've done on this new set of uploads I've been doing. But yes, I think it's a perfect movie. It's a masterpiece. It's easily one of my favorite films. 5 out of 5. Perfect. But anyways, guys, that's it for my review on Bone Tomahawk. If you guys have seen this movie, comment down below your guys' thoughts on it. If you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out. But anyways, y'all, thank you guys so much for watching the review. Take care, and the Explorer of Horror is out. Peace.